friends, and welcome to the CU Insight Network. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUinsight.com, also the host of the CU Insight Experience podcast. But on this show, it's my job to have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community to identify a few issues that are affecting all credit unions and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from and make our credit unions a better place, do things a little bit better. I'm excited for today. My guest on the show is Robert Johnston. He is the CEO of Adlumin, and let me try that again. Adlumin Inc. And I'd like to just, Robert, bring you in and jump right into the conversation. First, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Randy. Really appreciate you having me on. I love the credit union industry, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, I love that. Well, it's a good place to start then. Most of us did not start out, like going, hey, let's work in credit union someday, right? But then once we get here, we're like, this is a good space to be. What did you want to be when you grew up and when you were growing up, and how did becoming the CEO here and working with credit unions, come about?
Yeah, well, the CEO was definitely kind of a long road, but I grew up in Central Florida. I went to the United States Naval Academy. I suppose my father and mother were both Marines. They were both in the Marine Corps, and I kind of wanted to follow in their footsteps a little bit. So I went in the Marine Corps after, graduating from the Naval Academy. That's where I got exposed to computers. Cyber warfare was just kind of taking off. And this is in 2008. And no one really knew anything about it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the Marine Corps, but I knew that I liked computers. I had studied them in college, and cyber warfare was beginning to take off. So that's what I decided I wanted to do. I joined the Marine Corps. I did that for most of my career there in the Marine Corps. And then after about 8 years, it was time to move on and do something else. So I left the Marine Corps and I joined the private sector. And I always wanted to start a technology company. I really noticed an underserved market in credit unions.
Yeah.
I felt that, that they were kind of torn between what we now call low-cost log management, these like very cheap tools that don't scale well, they're not very effective, and they're not meeting kind of the regulatory and security compliance requirements that they have in the credit union industry. And then the other end of the spectrum was like tools made for Bank of America, where it's like shooting a mouse with an elephant gun, right?
Absolutely.
It's like super expensive. It takes a PhD to use it. Like it's complicated, you know what I mean? And there was no middle ground. It was like, well, I either buy, this crazy piece of technology that I don't even know how to use or don't have time to figure out how to use, or, I'm using this cheapo, Chinese-made IKEA trinket, you know what I mean? And so I decided that it was a good opportunity to kind of build a middle ground using automation, using data science, using great user experience.
So two things. First, thank you and your family for your service. It sounds like it's generational, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you, sir. If you and I were, and I hope this happens someday soon, if we meet at a conference, give us that elevator pitch, right? Like if you and I were riding the elevator, what is Adlumin? What makes it different? How do you support the credit union space?
Great. That's a great question. So Adlumin is a security and compliance automation platform built specifically for financial institutions. Financial institutions have unique technological requirements. For instance, the core banking platform, like Scimitar and Fiserv platforms and all sorts of other correlation platforms, credit union core banking platforms, are all built on old mainframe systems. Well, no one else except for Adlumin can integrate mainframe systems into their overarching security and compliance ecosystem. And those mainframe systems, like it's one system in a credit union, but a credit union is not a credit union without its core banking platform, right? Like a credit union just would not exist. So why can't you integrate that into your overarching security and compliance ecosystem, right? So this is what I mean when I talk about those unique technology requirements. We've really geared our software development pipeline, the features that we create to attack specific pain points that credit unions have in compliance, like Intrex CU or NCUA ACET is automatically built into the platform. Unique technological requirements like core banking platforms, unique technology systems like nCino and other applications that they may be using. Those are really unique applications only to finance, and they are applications that we have brought in.
Okay, so when we were, kind of preparing for the show, and it's a place I'd like to start, you just were touching on it, right? The core banking system. Without it, we're not credit unions, right? Like, so what does it look like though to optimize that core banking security within the, the current credit union business model?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those core banking platforms, many of them, most of them are built on mainframe systems, and they have been long since forgotten, right? No other security company or compliance company really touches, those computer systems because they are, there's today a fundamental knowledge gap of who can develop applications on those systems. There really is. No one, it's hard to find a developer that has the skill set to do that. And so, what it means is that, Adlumin has developed custom software or custom application software that you can install and integrate onto your core banking platform, and that will extract compliance data like privilege analysis, accounts, the various compliance metrics like password duration, when they last set their password, all sorts of things like that, as well as extracting all the log data that we can from those mainframes so that we can successfully find threats, malfunctions, and IT operations failures that exist on the core.
And I'm going to put my ignorance out there right now, okay? So maybe somebody else who's watching will too. But what does it mean when you say one-touch compliance reporting for credit unions? That was a question I was interested to ask because I read that multiple times places, and I was like, what does that mean? Or what does that look like?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. It looks exactly how it sounds. You've got very specific compliance reports that you must accomplish in the credit union industry. Take NCUA ACET for one example. We have an NCUA ACET module. You come to the Adlumin portal, you fill a few things out, and then you press one button. It says produce report, and you're emailed a report instantaneously. It's your entire, NCUA ACET, compliance report that you can hand to an auditor. And you can even schedule that. It can really be zero-touch compliance reporting if you want, because you can just schedule it to be delivered to your inbox every month or, however often you need.
However you want to. So it was an interesting question when you were talking about that. I started to think about is with how fast things change, how do you keep up with whether it's regulations changing? We have a new administration right now. There's probably going to be some different things that come out of that. How do you guys stay ahead of that? And then I'm always blown away when people we're talking cybersecurity. And boy, from your background, I'm sure you know this better than anybody. How do you stay ahead of the bad guys?
Yeah, sure. So, regulations do change. I think fortunately, NCUA ACET or other Intrex CU financial regulators, they don't change really that often, or at least I guess that's a very kind of subjective thing. I don't think they change very often, but when we do see changes, of course, we go in and update, update our regulatory compliance modules as needed. But I think, writ large, like it's, those things don't change that often. And they are a hassle for, those credit unions complete. How we stay ahead of threats, you constantly got to keep your ear to the ground. There's two things that we're balancing, right? When we're talking about like what kind of information and feedback we're giving to our compliance customer or our credit union customers. And one is, the need for compliance information and data, just IT operations data, like a server crashed or a system broke or an application broke. These things can often be even more dangerous than threats, because threats come around every once in a while, like systems breaking or applications breaking occurs, like every day, right? Like that's an everyday occurrence, right? So those are much more prevalent. But you've got to keep your your ear to the ground for the threats. We really have two teams at Adlumin that are focused on that. One is the data science team. So the data science team is what you would call a team designed to get out ahead of emerging threats, right? They're trying to use a different method to discover things that are interesting. They're trying to use mathematics, right? And the nice thing about mathematics is it's not so hard coded to a specific thing. It's really designed to find variance. So if you write a signature for one threat, will it find variant 2 or variant 3 or variant 4 or 5 of the same threat? And the answer is probably not. Maybe. Data science is designed to allow for quite a bit of variance when it comes into play. The other is, of course, your traditional detection engineering, static rule writing type things where I'm writing an algorithm or a function or method to find this exact threat. So we do both, and new threats are constantly released all the time. Threat intelligence is a big component of that, integrating threat intelligence sources so that it becomes more of a collective security base as opposed to just Adlumin trying to, take that entire burden and that entire function. Threat intelligence also happens to be, an NCUA ASET domain 2 mandate, right? And that's another reason why we would bring threat intelligence in. Like the NCUA says that you must integrate threat intelligence into your security portfolio, thus also making it part of your compliance portfolio, right? It's now become a compliance mandate to integrate threat intelligence. And so, at Adlumin, we do focus on those things, and we, that's the reasons behind why we do what we do.
Let me ask you this. When you're sitting down with your team at Adlumin and you're talking about credit unions and you're looking at the space overall, and this is what I'm just going to throw at you. What are, like in the beginning, you talked about why you started the company, right? Like it's not the Bank of America, but it's not, just something that doesn't do the job. When you sit there and you look out at the 5,000 credit unions out there, is there a place that like we're just not doing well and we need to really improve this? That you see, or and maybe even to flip that a different way, are some doing it better than others? Is there a kind of a gap in the haves and the have-nots right now?
Yeah, I think at the forefront of my mind is core banking security. We're doing terrible at that. The only thing that if a credit union has, say, $1 billion in assets, right? The only thing actually proving that they have $1 billion in assets is that core banking system that's holding the general ledger. And more often than not, the only thing that's securing that system is a username and a password. That's it. And that username and password, the IT people are using all the time. Some of them keep it in a text file on their desktop or something like that, like how to access this core banking system because it's so complex, no one knows how to use it. If I was a criminal and I just wanted to wreak havoc on the United States and erase $1 billion worth of value from the planet, I would just go brick and destroy a core banking platform because it just takes a username and password to get into it. Yeah. I think that's what keeps me up at night.
Right.
Right. Yeah. The next thing
someone like you thinking about this, I just have to say. So.
Yeah. Someone's got to,
Right.
Unfortunately, it had to be me, I guess. But the other thing is what I noticed the regulatory requirements, what they were demanding was such robust data collection from a credit union just to comply. Like you've got to collect all these logs from every single system within your environment. Well, that's actually an immense amount of data, right? And in the IT world, data is money, right? Data costs money, and if you want to keep that on premise and be able to do something with it, you've got to buy all these servers and data storage and hard disks, which clearly is a huge play for cloud, right? Because in a cloud model, right? In a cloud model, data storage is like a commodity. It's the lowest priced commodity that you can have, and you can offload that and not have to worry about the life cycle management issues that come with log or data retention servers and things like that. And I think that's the biggest piece is the life cycle management problems that if you try and do it in-house, that you now carry the burden for. On top of everything else you carry the burden for. Now you got to take care of the care and feeding of these computer systems. So, it's been a big approach that we've taken at Lumen, integrating the right technologies, caching servers, the data lake technologies, things like that, to make sure that we can help meet the data storage requirements for any bank or credit union, for that matter, across the United States, because rules are different. Normal credit union is a year, but if you happen to be a state chartered credit union in like New York, you fall under DFS regs. Regulations, right? So your retention requirements are a little bit different. If you happen to sell securities or have a broker dealer side business or sister company, you fall under FINRA, right? And so these things all create different requirements for different credit unions.
That's a lot. As we kind of get towards the end of the first section of this show, I was excited to ask you about this, and I'll be honest, I'm more excited now because just with your background and what you're all doing there. If you're breaking out the crystal ball, you mentioned one of the things that keeps you up at night. Like, what are you? I mean, we've seen it across the board. There's been a ton of disruption in financial services, even from outside the banking space, right? So it's. What's keeping, what are you excited about? What are you and the team at Lumen working on, going forward when you think of innovation for your company on how you can, meet these challenges that all credit unions are facing?
We're seeing a tremendous move to cloud. So like email, credit union email being hosted on premise with your own Exchange servers, there's advantages and disadvantages of that. One of the most significant disadvantages is, we touched on it earlier, the life cycle management component, right? Like, if you host Exchange, you are now responsible for every aspect of email, and email is so important. Like, I'm pretty sure you couldn't close a loan without email. It's not possible, in today's world, right? And so, we're seeing a lot of move to things like Office 365, right? Or more and more cloud services like cloud storage, keeping your documents in SharePoint, or keeping your documents on OneDrive using Azure Active Directory. There's a lot in the credit union space, a lot of, Microsoft usage. I feel like in other industries, we see a lot more Google usage for some reason. So it's like banking and finance really loves Microsoft and everyone else loves Google. Yeah. So
we use Google at CU Insight. So
yeah. And we support both. But I will tell you that we see, and this is the issue that's coming from that, breaches of email and Azure all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And people are getting these little phishing emails and saying, hey, reset your Office 365 password, and people fall for it all the time. Right. And then the next thing you know, you've got someone logging in from Africa, accessing this bank or credit union employee's email, right? And the next thing you know, the VPN, they log into the VPN, and then the next thing you know, they ran ransomware on all your servers, right? And that seems to be the biggest, the biggest, I think, more modern day threat is ransomware is of course on the rise. And there are a lot of different things you can do to harden yourself from that, but that's what we're seeing with the rise of cloud. The rise of email breaches, business email compromise is becoming quite prevalent.
Okay, yeah. So something else that ransomware is a scary thing, right? Like, you're just at the mercy sometimes there. So I'd like to have this has been a ton of fun. I could keep talking to you forever on this stuff because I find it so intriguing, and I know it's something we're all dealing with, whether we're a credit union or a company like CU Insight, right? So it's good stuff. And we'll link to a bunch of stuff in the show notes, but I'd like to have a little bit of fun to wrap up the show. It's just like on the other podcasts, some rapid fire questions. It allows, the listeners to get to know you better. So was there a question I've added this year? Was there that COVID purchase or that recent purchase that you didn't know you needed, but now you don't know how you'd live without?
That is a good question. So I will tell you, we went from using only one video conferencing technology to, I'm pretty sure now we have them all. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. We've got them all. We've got Zoom, we've got GoToMeeting, we've got Microsoft Teams, we've got Slack. Like, there's not, if you are selling a video conferencing app, that we don't already have, we're suckers. We'll probably buy it.
We'll probably sign up for that too, right? Yep.
Yeah.
This year has changed the way we all communicate and do business. That's for sure. When you hear the
Yep.
word success, who is the first person that comes to mind and why?
The word success, I would say Jeff Bezos.
Okay. How come?
The incredible business success. And I'm not just talking about, moving from, I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, the movement from, e-commerce to cloud hosting. Tremendous.
Yeah.
He's shaped the world. He's shaped the world with infrastructure as a service. And for a lot of flack that, someone like, or, companies like Amazon or Jeff Bezos have gotten during the pandemic, can you imagine a pandemic without Amazon delivery? Because it would be much worse. And not only much worse, but much more dangerous. Can you imagine if you'd had to go to the store every time you wanted toilet paper or soap or whatever else you needed? You would have to go to the store to get that. That's what it would be like without Amazon in the picture. It would have been a much more dangerous 2020. And God bless that company. I think they've saved a lot of people's lives, and I'm not sure they get enough credit for that.
Yeah, and even with their since they own Whole Foods too, we were even getting our groceries just at our doorstep, right?
Right.
So, just turned
That's right.
around. The random question: what's the greatest album of all time?
The greatest album of all time. So I'm not going to show, I think, my age here, but this is something I grew up listening to with my father, and it was Sting. I remember, that's not even from my generation, but I remember my dad got a brand new 8-changer CD disc in the back where you could change to 8 CDs, but he never changed off of Sting. And he had this old, he had this old 1960 something white Stingray Corvette, and he used to drive around in this 1960s white Stingray Corvette and listen to Sting. And I think that is an album that I'll remember the rest of my life.
I will date myself as older than you. The first cassette tape I got with the boombox I got for Christmas was The Police, Synchronicity. So it was Sting.
Yeah.
And I think my mom bought it because she was like, that was number one on the charts at that time, in an old record store. So is there any
It's a timeless album.
Oh, absolutely, right. Is there any book that either you've gifted other people or you just think everyone should read?
Oh, wow. Very interesting. That is a tough question. These are rapid fires. Yeah, I do a lot of reading. You should see certainly my bookshelves. It depends what you're interested in. I would say from a business perspective, one of the most impactful books for me has been Start with the Why.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Simon
so,
Sinek, right?
Yeah. And so that's a very impactful book. For all the obvious reasons, I think I come from an engineering background, right? And the why isn't always on the forefront of an engineer's mind. So if you're an engineer out there and you're looking to build a piece of technology or build a company and take the entrepreneurial route, engineers are well positioned at a lot earlier age than non-engineers, I think, to start companies. And but you shouldn't do it without reading Start with the Why first, because I promise you will build the wrong thing. And so
right, you'll build what you want, not what other people want, right? So
exactly.
That's fantastic. Oh no, that is a good one. I've seen him at a couple of conferences speak, and he's just fantastic. So yeah, that is a good one. I'm a fan myself. If the calendar's empty, what does Robert do to unwind? What does that work-life integration look like when you're not building a company?
I go for a run and I play with my daughter. I have a brand new, about 15-month-old daughter, and so she's a lot of fun to play with, without a doubt. We've got a little play set out back, and so if I just want time to myself, I'll go for a run. That's how I like to unwind. But go just hanging out with with my daughter for a little while. It's a lot of fun too.
That's awesome. Okay, now I'm circling back to the music thing. What's on your like Spotify playlist when you're running? You got there.
Yep. So I do, I do listen to, I like a lot of reggaeton when I run, actually. I'm from Florida, so that style of music's really popular, but I like a lot of that reggaeton when I run. It's really fast paced. It's like I'm at a Miami nightclub, while I'm running. Yeah. Little secret of mine.
Yeah, you don't want easy listening when you're up for the run, right? So, well, hey,
yeah, Robert, that's not gonna.
Not going to keep me going. I was just going to say, It's been an absolute blast. I can't wait till our paths can actually cross in person. We will link to everything we talked about in the show notes. The last question I have for you, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or ask some of our listeners and viewers today?
The only thing I would say is, when you're out there and you're looking at the different technologies that are available for you, the biggest recommendation I have is every credit union is different, and look at the unique pain points that you have, whether they're compliance and regulatory, whether they're the unique technology that's deployed within your environment, and look for solutions that are impactful for you, that attack those very specific pain points, because IT and security and compliance shouldn't be a burden. Like, the tools should make your life easier, right? and that's the goal, because you shouldn't be spending a lot of time on this stuff, or the least amount of time on this stuff, because it's overhead, right? This is not the business model of a credit union. This is something you have to do in order for you to do your business model. So, really focus in on pulling out and extracting those specific things that you may need. And then that's how you do a search for your vendor.
Well, thank you again, Robert, for being on the show. I hope you and yours stay well, and I look forward to our paths crossing in the future.
Thank you. Same to you.